I know I'm going to catch a lot of heat for this, but I really don't care. If you're in an environment where you are training yourself to be distracted, of course you're going to be distracted. Gentlemen, welcome back to another video. My name is Joseph from Masculine Theory, and today what I thought I would do is give you a gift, something free, a free course on the Advanced Self-Improvement course. Now, I wanted to do this course because I get many questions every single day from individuals that are in various different, what would you say, painful processes in their life, and I wanted to give them some practical application. There are a lot of nuances to the cases that are, given towards me and shared with me, and I empathize with a lot of you deeply. And if I can go back to the areas of my life where I was in similar positions, what would be the most valuable thing for me? It would be what's on the board right behind me. So we've got a good old classic whiteboard video, coming back with a whiteboard video. So I'm going to take you through it one by one. We're first going to diagnose what is the trope of most modern Western men. We're then going to ask ourselves why it's a trope. We're then going to talk about how we can mitigate the said challenge, and then we're going to look at when we should start to incorporate it into our lives. So this is a little bit advanced. It's going to take a lot of what would you say, a varied approach. Some people might start off a little bit smaller. Some people might start off by incorporating a lot of these into their lives. But what I can promise is going to be very valuable. So stick along, and we'll go through this together. Maybe get yourself a cup of tea, cup of coffee, glass of water, and sit back, relax, and I'm going to kind of take you through it step by step. So let's get going on the whiteboard video. So how to fix your life in 12 weeks. If you follow exactly what I say, in 12 weeks, you could be a very different man. So first of all, we've got a what, we've got a whys, we've got a hows, and we've got a when. So what is my attempt to diagnose what is the issue here with most modern Western men? We've got 4 that crop up the most. So one of these is going to pertain to what you're experiencing right now. So we'll start off at the top. What is happening inside most modern Western men? Low energy. First and foremost, the biggest complaint I get from my clients or people who are looking to improve their lives is, Joseph, once I've finished my 9 to 5 and I get home, I'm just tired. I just got no energy to go to the gym or start my business or work on my social skills. Whatever the case may be, is I don't have the capacity to be able to do that. You also talk about metabolism going down. With metabolism going down, so do other health markers. Fatigue starts to settle in. Body fat is starting to increase, and low drive for life in general starts to become more prevalent. So why does this happen? Fundamentally, it happens because you're not exercising enough and your testosterone is low. Now, I did a really big video on testosterone a couple of videos ago, so please watch through that. That's a very comprehensive testosterone optimization guide. But exercise is one of the key principles you have to be incorporating in your life. This is a non-negotiable. A lot of the complaints that I get towards this point here is, well, Joseph, I don't have enough energy to exercise, so how can I exercise? And I say, no, you're looking at it completely the wrong way. You're not exercising, so you don't have the energy. Do you see the paradox there? So we first need to establish ourselves in some kind of exercise in order to start mitigating some of these effects here. So how can we do that specifically? Whenever I'm suggesting to anyone who is, let's say, a beginner at the gym or even advanced to the gym, what they should be doing, compound lifts. Another way to kind of look at it in terms of your health is you need to choose your pain, choose your suffering. So you can either suffer now in the short term by lifting heavy weights that hurt and it's uncomfortable and it's not pleasant in the moment, or you can suffer later on in life when your body starts to fight against you, when the fat is piling up, when you've got arthritis in your knees, when you've got osteoporosis in your bones, when you've got sarcopenia in your muscles. So choose your pain. Either choose it now or choose it later. And let's go with the former. When should we be doing these kind of compound lifts? So I like to keep things very simple. 3 times per week is an absolute minimum. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And break it down into push, pull, legs. Push, pull, legs. On Monday, do pulling exercises. A compound lift for a pulling exercises, barbell row. Incorporating a lot of muscles in your lats and your backs and in your biceps. Compound lift is wherever you're using more than two muscles in one movement. Wednesday, let's say we do push. So we do everything that we're doing in a pushing moving pattern. Chest, triceps, bench press. That's an easy one. You could do shoulder press as well if you wanted to. And then legs. Last but not least, legs. Can't forget about the legs. You can't be skipping out on leg days, guys. In respects to testosterone optimization, the bigger muscles that you're working out, the bigger the spike in testosterone. So legs will spike your testosterone like nothing else. Squats, deadlifts have to be a staple in your program. And you can build such a fantastic physique around that very, very simple programming structure. So just to reiterate, Monday, pulling. Talk about barbell rows. You could even throw in a deadlift in there if you wanted to. Wednesday, pushing, bench press, shoulder press. Friday, legs, squats. You could do deadlifts instead. So that, if we reverse engineer high energy, good high metabolism, burning fat quicker, high muscle growth, it has to start from those compound lifts 3 days a week. And you reverse engineer the success there. So the second thing to diagnose in most modern Western men is people that are feeling very stressed, socially anxious, okay, in situations where you just can't find your center. You feel the pull to validate yourself, or you're not good enough in that particular situation, especially to other women. Erectile dysfunction. And we also look at low competitive behavior, maybe even not seeking competitive scenarios, okay? So if you find yourself identifying with a lot of these emotions here, why is that the case? Oversexed, porn addiction, and promiscuity, okay? This is a subject matter near and dear to my heart, and I've talked about it extensively on the channel, but we have to recognize that our fundamental life force energy, the thing, I mean, this kind of ties into a lot of these different points here, but in respects to low drive and just not having a zeal for life, it's because you've been zapped of your energy. It's because you're constantly pleasuring yourself. We're in a very feel-good culture, and we're wasting a very creative energy. And when you recognize that you're, making love to a screen in terms of pornography, that's almost like a, you may laugh at me, but I think that's a form of almost like witchcraft. I mean, that's a form of magic in respects to, you're gratifying yourself to an image of somebody else, and they don't know you, they have no prior relationship with you. And what does that say about yourself? I mean, I find it pretty comical that I have to defend myself, that it's not a normal thing to pleasure myself to other people having sex. Even saying that sentence, has to bring up some kind of feelings about you. And then when you're in situations with real women, real potential partners, and the only other reference point you have for an intimate relationship is a virtual relationship, of course you're going to be anxious. Of course you're not going to know where your social cues are. Of course you're going back to those moments where it was easy. Do you see where it's coming from? This also ties into this low competitive behavior, because if you realize you have a kind of matrix, a simulation of all these artificial women that you can make love with multiple times, you have sexual novelty as well. So you can make love to redheads, brunettes, blondes, different body shapes and sizes and different company. What are you communicating to your body? You're communicating to your body that you've already won, that you don't need to be sexually competitive with other men because you can make love to virtual women. So why bother? So that's why you're having these feelings like your erectile dysfunction, your low competitive behavior, your anxiety, your stress, because fundamentally what has happened is you're fragmenting between what the nervous system is experiencing, which is an orgasm, but the reality you see out your eyes isn't consistent with the feeling that you're getting, meaning that the body doesn't recognize the difference between a virtual woman and a real woman. All it knows is it's getting the feedback of orgasm. So that's why you're so confused, you're so neurotic, you're so stressed, you're so anxious. So we need to overcorrect this. We need to correct this as soon as possible. So how do we do it? We have to we stop watching porn, guys. It's not good for you. We have to control our emotions fundamentally, because that is the root cause of why we continue to relapse to pornography, is because you're not taming your emotional reflex. Every single relapse you've had, every single reason you've gone back to pornography is because it started in a negative state, because your boss said something at work that you found distasteful, or maybe your crush dumped you, or your girlfriend dumped you, or maybe something else happened in your life which wasn't giving you positive emotions, so you sought positive emotions in something a little bit more insidious. And this idea of, pornography relieves my stress. It causes your stress in the first place, and only people who are not addicts will realize this. You'll realize, I mean, God, life is so much more pleasurable when you don't have that addiction in your life. Talk to any former addict, and they'll tell you exactly what I've told you so far. In respects to also how we can control our emotions a little bit better, we need to be meditating. We need to have some kind of self-reflective practice that's allowing us to see our emotions for a separate entity unto their self. So what I mean by that is, whenever you experience negative emotions, and some of the examples that I've previously talked about, that is 99% of the reason why you're relapsing. But you have to remember that you aren't your emotions. You aren't your feelings. You aren't your negative emotions. You aren't guilt. You aren't apathy. You aren't shame. You aren't depression. You experience those things as something separate to yourself. It's only when you identify with those negative emotions, you let them drive the car that you're in. You give them the driver's seat, so to speak. So you want to be sitting in the driver's seat by cultivating this air of meditation and being the witness of your emotions instead of the emotions themselves. A really good book to read is Letting Go by David Hawkins to fully dive deep into that latter point. Semen retention is something that comes up very, very, quite a lot in respects to sexual energy mastery, and the point that I've just made there. A lot of people ask me, well, Joseph, does this mean I can never ejaculate again? Of course, it doesn't mean that. It just means that we're being a little bit more aware and mindful that this is a creative essence, and it's going to affect our mood. It's going to affect our energy. It's going to affect some of the things that we've mentioned. So in the former part of the point here. So we need to have an understanding of willfully using that energy for good, for pleasure. In some circumstances, I'm not against pleasure, I'm just against cheap pleasure. I'm just against addiction to pleasure. So the Taoists have a very interesting concept of how often an individual can ejaculate corresponding to their age. So if you're 20 years old, you can ejaculate every 4 days. If you're 30 years old, you can ejaculate every 8 days. If you're 40 years old, every 10 days, and 50-year-old, every 20 days. And if you're 60, no ejaculation whatsoever. Okay? This is conserving of your life force energy, your creative energy. If you want to know a little bit more about that, then I have plenty of videos on that subject matter I go into intimate detail with. But let's push on to the third part of the course here. Individuals that are experiencing sickness, constantly getting sick, immune system is taxed, inflammation will be very, very high in the body. Inflammation, just a quick point of inflammation, is the root of all modern diseases. Okay? Brain fog, lethargy, diabetes and cardiovascular diseases. Individuals experiencing some of these latter points are going to be overeating, gluttonous. They're also going to be consuming a lot of processed foods and also carbohydrates as well. So the answer to this is very simple. It's a subtraction. And in fact, a lot of these are just an act of subtraction. Don't think too much about what can I add to my life to improve it. First, ask yourself the question, what can I take away from my life to improve it first? A lot of these modern tropes are a consequence of overconsumption because you've got too much in your life of this particular thing. And once you start to cut it out like a toxin in the blood, it's a reversible cause of your particular neurotic tendency. So fasting is going to be an excellent remedy to this overeating and overconsumption cycle. When you're eating, I'm very, very bullish on a high fat, high protein. It is a ketogenic diet, but I think there is a time and a place that there is a role for carbohydrates, there is a role for fiber, there is a role for vegetables, of course, in your diet. I certainly think so, but you should be prioritizing high fat and protein in your diet. Why are these food groups so important? Well, first and foremost, high fat is really important because it doesn't have an effect on your insulin response. I think it's about 60% of people living in modern Western culture are overweight now. So their diabetes risk is very, very high. Their blood sugar is very, very high, and it's causing insulin resistance, meaning that there's so much sugar in the blood that it's starting to affect the peripheries of your cardiovascular system, so the small capillaries in your fingers. People are getting neuropathy, people are getting amputations, people are going blind, and it's all a consequence of excess sugar in the blood. What's the one thing that can mitigate the risk of sugar in the blood? fat. Fat has a very, very small effect on your insulin response, so it won't tax your pancreas, which secretes insulin. So you want to be taking advantage of animal fats, avocados, nuts, seeds, any kind of oily fishes. These things are going to be very, very resourceful for you in regards to mitigating your blood sugar risk, which also has a risk on cardiovascular disease, heart disease, things like that. Fat is also an essential food group for cognitive function, for your nervous system. A lot of your hormones are made up of fat molecules, so if you want to regulate your body a little bit better, you have to have high fat in your diet. Protein is fairly self-explanatory. If we're eating protein sources like poultry, beef, eggs, fish, it's going to support our muscular system, it's going to boost metabolism, and it's going to support us in our recovery when we're lifting weights. So you have to have high fat, high protein in your diets as a staple, but you also want to be fasting as well. Now, a very common question I get in respects to fasting is, how often should I be fasting? The answer is relative to your goals. So the kind of point here, I should probably moved a little bit earlier so you can see this, but there are 3 different types of fasting which I think are really, really, really resourceful. The first one is OMAD. So OMAD means 1 meal a day. Make it a feast at the end of your day, where you get your fats, where you get your proteins. You can get a little bit of vegetables, maybe a little bit of fruit in there as well, but be very, very cautious with the amounts of carbohydrates that go on there. Alternative day feeding. So this could be you're eating one day normally, breakfast, lunch and dinner, but the next day you're not eating anything whatsoever. That means you're going to have to be very, very careful about what the foods that you're eating on the day that you're eating. Needless to say, make sure you get your fats, make sure you get your proteins. And then you've got your intermittent fasting 18-6, so this means fasting for 16 hours, only eating for an 8-hour window. And I would suggest maybe eating between the hours of something like 1 o'clock and 8 o'clock every single day. You can eat as much as you want during that period, as long as it's in that eating window and it's of the food groups that I've mentioned previously. Okay. Last but not least, this is the last trope that we need to be mindful of, guys. People experiencing attention disorder. I don't want to go into ADHD too much here, but I simply mean your ability to focus on tasks for a long period of time is an absolute catastrophe nowadays. Low IQ, I was just going to put stupid, but if there is an impact on your ability to concentrate, best believe there's going to be an impact on your ability to function at a cognitive level highly. Victim mentality, groupthink and programming. God, the social political landscape at the moment is another absolute catastrophe. A lot of people are falling into this victim category where they believe that they are being oppressed by the world. There may be legitimate cases there, but I'm a firm believer that it is not resourceful to think that you are a victim. It is not resourceful to believe that things are outside of the remit of your control. It is not resourceful to refrain to the fact that regardless of what you do, regardless of the effort you put in, that you cannot make life what you want it to be. I reject that premise entirely. And programming, groupthink, this kind of falls into the, what would you say, the former stages of being a victim, is that you hear from other people how they're oppressed in their lives, and you take that story and you adopt that story for yourself, and you start to talk about the things that I've previously mentioned. So why is this happening? Media, overconsumption of media, especially media that isn't good for you. Talk about the news, you talk about other media outlets that are typically more left-leaning, that kind of adopt more of this victim mentality idea. Doom scrolling, God, one of the reasons your attention is so fried is because you're on Instagram just scrolling, refreshing, and it is just absolutely frying your nervous system. This is the science, guys. If you put it this way, if you are continue to do behavior like that, could be Instagram, could be fucking TikTok, could be Facebook, whatever the case may be, you are training your neurology to be distracted, to be stimulated by another source of media every second or so. So you're training yourself to be distracted. You're not training yourself to focus. And this is what I would say to the people with, who presume they have some kind of attention deficit disorder and need to be put into medication. I know I'm going to catch a lot of heat for this, but I really don't care. If you're in an environment where you are training yourself to be distracted, of course you're going to be distracted. Why aren't you teaching your children to focus on tasks for long periods of time? Like drawing. It could be something simple as drawing. Just draw for an hour. No, every single child these days has an iPad in their pram. It's absolutely ludicrous to believe that your environment isn't having an influence on how your ability to concentrate is functioning. Lack of deep work. Ask yourself seriously, if you had to pick some random worker out of their 9 to 5, how many hours are you spent in deep work, focusing on maybe writing, focusing on another in-depth task? What would they say? Out of that 9 hours working, it's probably not even an hour. The rest of it is just getting notifications, email here, Teams message here, Zoom call here, meeting here, when you're not, again, cultivating your ability to focus at long periods of time. When I'm working here, I will block out 2 hours of my day where I turn my phone off, I put my laptop on work mode, do not disturb mode. I tell my missus, do not come in here and distract me. I'm exercising my ability to focus. And if you're constantly being bombarded by notification here, message there, no wonder why you're fucking distracted. So it's a skill that you have to learn. No critical thinking and self-evaluation. So this kind of ties in back into the victim mentality idea that most people believe they are oppressed because of somebody else's idea, because it's convenient to be a victim. It doesn't require any critical thinking. It also requires effort to be an individual. To have a point of view requires effort. You have to do your own research. So most people, what they would do is they will latch onto a particular news article that says, this is the reason why the world is against you. This is the reason why the government sucks. This is the reason why you can't lose any weight. And they adopt that idea and it becomes their reality, and then they continue to live in a perpetual cycle of fear and suffering. It is not resourceful to think that way for your future. It's easy to think that way because it means you don't have to do anything. If you did any kind of self-evaluation, then you would realize that that you're doing the easy sit thing instead of the hard thing or the right thing. So how can we mitigate all these absolutely just insidious thought patterns? So you have to have a reflective practice first and foremost. You need to sit in some kind of meditation. This can be walking meditation without your phone, without these distractions in your first place, and just sit. Just sit and be with your thoughts. See what emotions and thoughts come to the surface. I also am a big fan of journaling. So I have my journal. Here. And every night I write in my journal the thoughts that have come up, the ideas and behaviors that I've gone through today, and I evaluate myself. I evaluate my thinking. I ask myself, is it resourceful for me to think this way or is it not? Screen your environment. So look in your environment, look in the room you're in at the moment and ask yourself the question, is the room you're in conducive to your success? It might not be. It might be that you've got a laptop here, you've got a phone there, you've got an iPad there, you've got another screen there, and you're conditioning yourself to be distracted again. I have a lockbox that I keep all of my devices in whenever I'm in deep work. So it's on a timer. I lock the box, I put my devices in, and I put it on a timer for about 2 hours, and I cannot touch it in those 2 hours. Delete social media. I mean, God, if it's not giving the results that you want, get rid of it. Get rid of it. You're not missing out on much, I promise you that. It's a load of shit anyway. Unfollow neurosis-provoking content. This is an interesting one. So a lot of people will believe that they need to be informed because of the news, but in fact, the reality of the matter is that you're addicted to the adrenaline that you get when fear-provoking content is on the news. I mean, take the last 2 years, coronavirus, lockdowns, Russia and the Ukraine. It all provokes a neurological response. It releases chemicals in your nervous system that get you hooked on that feeling. So just delete it and only follow wholesome material. Follow content that inspires you, that motivates you, that educates you instead. I said before that you're no longer the 5 people that you spend the most time with. You're the average of the 5 content creators you consume. So if you're, watching news, if you're on TikTok, if you're watching, scantily clad women on Instagram, you're going to be the average of that. You're going to be a porn addict, you're going to be stressed, depressed, and neurosis. If you're watching fucking, eating mukbangs on YouTube, where people just get a load of shitty food and gorge on it for an hour and just talk a lot of nonsense, of course you're going to be the average of those 5 people. Do those people have your best interests at heart? No, they don't. So it's time to eliminate them. It's time to become brutally honest with ourselves and transparent with ourselves. How often should you be doing a self-reflective practice? Every single fucking day. Every single fucking day, you should be taking the time to evaluate yourself, to sit in the seat of meditation and analyze yourself. Ask yourself the question, what thoughts are arising in my consciousness the most? And are they resourceful? Are they helping me? Are they positive? Do they have positive intentions behind them? And you know, very, very soon you'll be able to analyze which ones are negative, that are putting you in a bad mood, and that are instigating some of these more neurotic tendencies that you see on the right, and eliminating them. Finding yourself, well, why is the reason here? And you'll realize it's because of these right here. And then you can start to incorporate the actions that are going to mitigate that, and then give you a little time frame for how often you need to be doing those things. So gentlemen, before I kind of let you go here, it's really important that I stress that there's going to be a difference in regards to where you are at the moment of your life and how many of these you implement. If you're very, very advanced, you might be doing 2 or 3 of these already pretty regularly. You just need to maybe work on maybe fasting, or maybe you know, quitting porn, or it could be exercising a little bit, or it could be adding a self-reflective practice into your day. If you're at the stage where you're really fucked and you identify with a lot of these things at the start here, take one, just take one, it could be exercise to get your energy back, and work on that for a month. So for 30 days, maybe work on the exercise. Next time you can work on quitting porn, and then you can work on something else once you've got those things in order. Most people fail because they try to do too many things at once. So let me reiterate again, pick one, streamline and dial into it, and 12 weeks time, after you add another and add a third, you will be a completely different person, and that is a guarantee from myself. So gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this more interactive kind of course style. I really enjoyed kind of coming back to the whiteboard, coming back to my roots for anyone that has been familiar with my content for a very, very long time. I'm thinking maybe of doing a couple more if anybody has any video ideas they'd like to see in whiteboard format. I would be happy to accommodate. But gentlemen, pleasure as always. Thank you for supporting me, and subscribe if you subscribe to what I've just said, and I'll talk to you again very, very soon. Take care.